Welcome back to Archaeology After Dark, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I am, of course, your colorful host, Daniel Rhodes. My guest today is Joshua Rubin. Josh, thank you for joining me.
Happy to be here. I'm a visiting assistant professor at Colby College in Maine, and I've been teaching there for about a year. Before that, I was at Bates College, also in Maine, for like 10 or 11 years, depending on your count of things.
So that must be interesting being in Maine with, especially with the 250 coming up. I imagine the original 13 colonies are pretty busy this year.
Yeah, I mean that's a bit beyond my particular purview, but I think there is some general excitement. Yeah.
So I invited Joshua because I came
Mhm.
across a social media post by the American Anthropological Association, I think is who it was,
Mhm.
about your lost library project or program.
Yeah, yeah.
So, what's the idea behind what you're trying to do?
Right. So, we can save the sort of the backstory for another question or a little bit later on. But basically, the overarching goal here is anthropology as a discipline, and archaeology I would include in that, bioanthro. I would include all linguistic, all under a giant umbrella here. Has produced an incredible amount of literature, right? Any undergrad is exposed to some of it. Graduate students are exposed to more. Professional anthropologists certainly have read quite a bit, but there's always more, right, to be read. And that's the published work. And that work is like well cataloged in the discipline. Journals maintain their archives. But at the same time, there's much more work that goes unpublished. There are, of course, fieldwork notes, photographs, diaries, things like that. But the scope of the Lost Library is basically any kinds of work that was intended for publication that, for whatever reason, never reached an audience. And so that could mean that the author passed away, sadly, when an article was still in production, an unfinished manuscript, somebody left academia and moved to industry, and then had no real like reason to pursue a revise and resubmit article, grant proposals that went unfunded, and the sort of the wager here, if you want to put it that way, is that works go unpublished for a lot of reasons that have nothing whatsoever to do with their scholarly merit. Um, and so, if that's true, and I think that a lot of my colleagues would agree, maybe you agree too, then there needs to be a repository for that work so that people can learn from it, people can engage with it, people can think with it. And so the premise of the Lost Library is creating, I think. Maybe your listeners know of other archives. I would love to hear about them, but I've talked to a number of archivists who say that this would be one, if not the first, then certainly one of a very small number of archives in anthropology that are designed to preserve unfinished work of that kind.
Yeah, and that's something I think a lot of the audience for this program would agree with, that there is
Mm,
a lot of I guess bias in the field as to what actually gets published or what's worth publishing. The publishers do have to ask themselves, will this actually, show a return on us publishing it? But at the same time, that doesn't mean the work that isn't getting published isn't worth reading. Like
right.
it's still somebody's life work, and that's kind of criminal in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, there are people, some of my closest colleagues who've done incredible work have left. I mean, this is a common story now with the way that academia has gone, but a number of people are teaching, incredible numbers of courses in a year and just don't have time to polish a publication to its, to for a journal. And so it has nothing to do with their intellectual merit, nothing to do with their abilities, nothing to do even with the sophistication of their thought. It's just the conditions in which they're working, to pick one of many possible examples, makes publication more difficult or maybe impossible.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of a double-edged sword in the field of anthropology is we are encouraged to do research, but
Mhm.
we're also encouraged to do profitable research, especially if we work for like a university or a government institution. The university or the institution, again, needs to see a return on the investment that they're putting into their faculty members or employees.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the nice things about academia is that return on investment, which I think is has a lot of validity, is way more open-ended than it would be in industry. one of my research projects is with researchers who work in the video games industry. I don't know if any of your listeners are invested in that. That's something that I am very excited about and can talk for ages about. And they're very clearly doing work for a return on investment model. They are running studies to figure out how video games can be better, more profitable, reach wider audiences, and so on. One of the luxuries, in the ideal model of academia, is that you could get to pursue a higher intellectual purpose without an eye toward what is marketable. But at the same time, there are disciplinary standards that are a product of a particular moment. Some work that might be published in 30 years isn't published right now, but it never comes to fruition, right? Just because there's certainly intellectual, like the fads of intellectual exploration. Again, who's able to do work and who isn't, who's able to take sabbaticals and who isn't. That's all a matter of a broader landscape that shapes what work comes out. And so there's all of this massive body of unfinished work, unreleased work, you could say, if you want to put it that way, that has probably great merit, but actually nobody knows because your work that you don't publish isn't visible to me, and my work that I never publish isn't visible to you, and so we have no space for sort of the engaging with those unfinished thoughts. And so this would be a venue for that.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of what you're trying to do, especially since the pandemic, people were taking a harder look at how information is available and how much research they put into the credibility of information, especially like
Hmm.
now that the internet reaches more and more people every day because of smartphones, laptops, Wi-Fi, whatever, that we didn't have 20, 30 years ago. People can actually put work in a place where people, like, say I put something on the internet like this program, somebody in Japan or like the farthest reaches of Australia can actually see it and connect with it and actually get something out of it too.
Right. No, I think that's totally true. And one of the things that I am keeping in mind is a lot of people, even if they leave academia, could certainly start their own website and post their unfinished articles and stuff like that. But there is no clear hub for those kinds of conversations. And the idea of the Lost Library would be if you're interested in what people are writing but then unable to publish or do not publish, the Lost Library can be a kind of place where you go and have a searchable database of those findings. And I think you're an archaeologist, so you probably have a unique perspective, and maybe some of your viewers and listeners do too, on what gets lost, right? The world is full of archaeological sites that have not been investigated or cannot be investigated, and if those sites are never visited, if you know objects are not examined, that information is just lost. That knowledge is just lost. And so I would imagine, I'm not an archaeologist, but I would imagine that maybe you feel this way, but certainly people I know who are archaeologists feel this way. There's like, oh my gosh, what if this site is the one that answers this question? What if this site is the one that can reveal a kind of connection across communities that we suspect but can't prove? And like the Lost Library is kind of like an intellectual repository that's engaging with a similar kind of project, I think.
Yeah, and I think I have a lot of respect about what you're saying because things do get lost, especially since before the digitalization age, we didn't have the cataloging system, we didn't have the labeling systems that we have now,
Right.
and certainly we weren't as careful when we go, exploring an archaeological site, and because, you know, excavation techniques were so invasive by today's standards, things do
Yeah.
get lost, and now we have, LiDAR, drone, and we can actually preserve something for a much longer period of time because it's digitized where somebody can actually find it.
Yeah, I mean, building a digital archive comes with its own concerns. I spoke with Christopher Nicholson, who a little shout out to the TDAR. I should know the acronym, what it stands for. It's an archaeological record, digital archaeological record at Arizona State, that offers a digital repository for all manner of archaeological data. But I've spoken with him, and he's like, all this data takes up, megabytes, gigabytes of space, the storage, the upkeep. And so while there is this incredible promise of connecting with people across the world and building a network of scholars who might be involved in the lost library, one of the things that's on the forefront of my mind that I'm working through right now is how do you make it sustainable? There's a kind of way in which even if paper archives or paper materials or any other kind of material is only in one place and therefore difficult maybe to preserve, digital stuff is ephemeral in a way. Like, you download a song and then maybe Spotify shuts down and the song is taken away from you and you never have it. Or you download a video game and the game, like, it's part of a server and then you don't have it anymore. And so digital preservation, of course, as I'm sure you know, brings its own kinds of challenges about storage and longevity. But that's definitely something that I'm thinking about as well as I work on this project.
So, what was your inspiration to start all of this? I mean, I know this is a great cause, but what was your like
Yeah.
lightning bolt moment? Like, I think I could do this and make it work.
Yeah, I mean, one of my philosophies for the present moment is uh, just the way to start doing something is to start doing it. And I know that that's a really kind of simple thing, but I launched this library last July with a website and a conference presentation. And I just said, I'm going to learn as I go and I'm going to build this because if you wait until you have the threshold of knowledge to do something, you may actually never get around to doing it. That threshold, the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. So you might as well just start with what you've got, and be humble, and admit your ignorance. But this project was really inspired by a kind of recognition that there are many, many grant proposals that are quite good that don't get funded because money is limited. There are many, many articles that colleagues of mine, friends of mine, I myself have tried to write, but haven't been able to follow through because we haven't gotten the grant funding to go to a field site to revisit some fundamental questions, or we haven't gotten the time off to revise this article, or we've been asked for more evidence and we can't get back to the field to find that more evidence. And just in general conversation with colleagues talking about how difficult it is to survive professionally in this present moment, there just seemed to be me to be a whole bunch of really, really rich insights in anthropology and I'm sure other disciplines, but I'm an anthro by training that are just lost. And I think that amount, my suspicion is that amount of things that are lost is increasing with time. Back in the 50s and 60s, there were far fewer anthropologists, and while there were still people very much outside of the discipline doing anthropological adjacent stuff that may have not gotten published, the community was much smaller. And now there are 10,000 plus anthropologists in the American Anthropological Association. Some of them are in industry, some of them are in graduate school, some of them are in academic positions, and then they're all producing work, and we're all kind of competing for a very small number of jobs. And that may mean that a lot of the best work, frankly, um, doesn't register. And so that's sort of the underlying motivation for the project.
Yeah, and I think social trends or like research
Mm,
field trends, have a lot to do with that too. Like, during the pandemic, people were, stepping back into history and looking at the cycles of pandemic diseases like yellow fever, Spanish flu, things like that.
absolutely.
Yeah. And now, with this year, it's the America 250. People are looking like at the revolution again, like how has our interpretation of the revolution changed?
Hmm.
But, next year it'll be like, ooh, the revolution ended, but what happened after that?
Yeah, no, it's true. And I think um, it's a reality, an undeniable reality that certain, particularly theoretical trends in academic anthropology are emerge, become widespread, become internalized in the discipline as paradigms, and then maybe dissipate as interest moves, as time moves, as the political economy of higher education changes. And so it's very possible, I think actually quite likely, that a lot of really good work is just untimely. And I'm borrowing a term from George Marcus and Paul Rabinow here that I think is really, really useful. It's just like, what if you have a really good idea, but the time is wrong for it? The audience isn't receptive to it. You write a grant proposal, the readers of the grant proposal don't understand your theoretical framework for whatever reason, and then your project doesn't get funded. Now, I want to be really clear. I'm not like speaking from grievance. I'm not speaking like, oh my gosh, I have so many brilliant ideas that the world just hasn't been able to see. because my work is untimely. I think that it would be very easy for someone to be like, of course Josh is motivated to do this. He's wrapped up in his own brilliance or something like that. That's really not what it is. I'm driven by a kind of fascination for ideas. My ideas are fine, but there are a lot of really, I've had great conversations with colleagues in administrative positions who have PhDs in anthropology, who have just brilliant, and history as well, who have brilliant perspectives on the world that they just never got published for reasons that had to do with maybe they had a kid, maybe a relative got sick, maybe they got sick. It's just like the extraneous kind of eventualities of life get in the way. And I think that if we're going to be committed as as an intellectual community, broadly defined, to the sort of the exploration of really interesting ideas, that there needs to be something like the Lost Library, where if you read the work of somebody and it's brilliant, but unfortunately it was never completed because their relative got sick and they had to care for them. Like you wouldn't want that to be the reason that a good idea didn't get out in the world. And so the Lost Library would be a space for some of those ideas to be preserved.
So for people, we've talked about the Lost Library a pretty good bit now. For people
Yeah.
who are watching this, how can they actually access it, or can they contribute something to it?
Right. Oh, thank you so much. That's such a good question. So the website is lost library.net. It's a very rudimentary website right now, but in the next month, I'm hoping, knock on wood, I'm gonna start to build a database with a data scientist colleague of mine, and we can actually start to fill it. We got a really exciting it's still unresolved, so I want to keep it a little bit vague. But somebody reached out as a result of visiting the website and hearing some publicity about the project, and said, "My mother passed away and was an anthropologist and has unfinished work. I would love to see about maybe putting it in the archive." And so they are the first person in this brand new project to come forward and say, "I think we may have some unfinished work that people might be interested in." And so I'm interested in multiple levels of engagement. One is if you want to just be informed about how the project is going, you can email me through the site or you can contact me through the site, and I will add you to the growing list of people who are just in the loop about what's going on. If you have archival experience and you know some of the pitfalls of building a database, like reach out to me through the site and specify that as well, because I'm learning from everybody. I've talked to people at various archives, but also people who have no sort of institutional home but have lots of experience working on archives, and I've learned from everybody. The third thing is if you know somebody who, for example, left academia or didn't finish their master's degree or didn't finish their PhD, but wrote some really cool stuff. Or maybe this is a story that applies to you as well. Reach out to me because we are almost to the point where I can excitingly say that we will be accepting submissions. The submission process will need to be established, but we're also looking for work that can help us kind of like iron out what that would look like. So if you've got work or you know people who have work, notify them about this project, spread the word, I suppose. So there are different ways that people could be involved. Whatever works for folks is great for me as well.
So this talking about video games earlier brought this
Yeah.
meme to mind is I want to say it's Minecraft. A bunch of people came together and actually put together like an online database of books or something in Minecraft and
Yeah.
made it available for countries that have either low literacy rates or they're very restrictive on the
Mhm.
literature they have available. But I was like, okay, that's a really creative way to actually help somebody, but also being really sly about how you go about doing it.
Yeah. I mean, people are doing things with Minecraft that it's just unbelievable. Like have built computers in Minecraft to play Minecraft. And so it ends up with kind of like a recursive, you're playing Minecraft, but you're also using a computer in Minecraft to play Minecraft. Just like the genius of the crowds, the genius of people who are really invested in these kinds of activities can produce some really amazing stuff. And yeah, I do sort of hope that the best version of this lost library will provide not just amplify the work of scholars who have left academia, but produced interesting insights, but also facilitate conversations and sort of expand the discussions among scholars working in academia with the literature that they're thinking with. And so to your point earlier about the intellectual fads and the ways that ideas move and priorities shift, this could potentially be the best iteration of it. The one that I hope for would be one that sort of offers a continual reminder that there's always more than whatever is the most exciting, widespread intellectual framework at play at a given moment.
And this is why when students ask me for advice, especially earlier in their careers, is I insist that they go to a conference. It doesn't even have to be like a huge, big expensive conference like some of the ones we have here that are, two or $300 to go
Mhm.
to. But just go to a conference and talk to some people that you've never met before. I don't know about anybody else, but when I go to a conference and I actually get home and settled in, I get kind of restless. And for the next 2 or 3 days, I have nothing but creative energy. And I'm like a hamster on the wheel. And then I crash after like that
Yeah.
third day.
Yeah, no, I'm the same way. Conferences are just this crucible of meeting great people and hearing interesting stuff, and then you go back to your hotel room or you go home and you just fall asleep, and your mind wanders, and then you go back to it, and everyone's exhausted after the conference. It starts out as like a break from your everyday routine, but then it ends up becoming its own kind of exhaustion, but also exhilarating at the same time.
Yeah, you just, you come home, you have all the creative energy. I cover my desk and post-it notes that I
Yep, yep,
slowly
exactly.
work my way through. And then when people come and visit me at my apartment, they're like, oh, so you've wandered into the conspiracy theory territory and
Exactly,
you're
exactly.
connecting everything with red string to make it make
Yeah,
sense.
yeah, no, totally agree. I'm exactly the same way.
Yeah. So students, if you start doing that, it's okay. Just make sure you take a break, catch like 20 minutes. I think the World Health Organization recommends a 30-minute nap. So make sure you get at least that during the day.
Yeah, get a nap in, rest your brain.
So that's my
Hmm.
2 cents for advice for students. What would you recommend for people who are wanting to get started in anthropology or
Yeah,
a digital project?
I mean, this is such a good question. With respect to digital projects, I have to admit that I am learning all the time, and so my my advice is pretty straightforward, which is like again, be humble, be aware of your ignorance, and learn from everybody. And it sounds like that's kind of what you're saying too, a little bit about talk to strangers at a conference. You'll never know what you're gonna learn. With respect to anthropology, the thing that I tell all of my students is there's nothing more heartbreaking than a lost idea. Actually, that's hyperbole, right? There are many more heartbreaking things than a lost idea. But when it comes to academic work, there's nothing more heartbreaking, I think, than a lost idea. And that's kind of animating, actually, now that I think about it, the Lost Library Project too. So like it's very nerdy to say this, but I think it's also maybe useful and might resonate a bit. Have a way to keep track of every idea you have, whether it is like you read a book and you get a really cool idea, jot it down on a piece of scrap paper, have a way to keep track of that scrap paper. If you are taking notes on a library book and you have a notebook, figure out a way to hold on to that notebook. Figure out a way not just to have the notebook on your desk, but know what's in that notebook. I have a digital piece of digital software that I've been using as a journaling application for about, embarrassingly enough, like 18 years now, different iterations of it. And every class that I've ever taught is in it. Every article I've read is in it. All my notes on the articles and books that I've read are in it. And it's like an extension of me. I hold on to everything that I possibly can in my little brain and in my notebooks, but I have this other much more robust brain that is my computer and backed up in the cloud and backed up. Make sure you have backups. That's also important.
Oh, yeah.
Backed up in various other places that make sure basically that if I have even the glimmer of an interesting idea, I don't lose it because that idea you may never get back. And it could be the article that really sort of motivates you to continue in anthropology and maybe the essay that you're most proud of. But you would never know if you lost it. So that's kind of my advice, I suppose.
Yeah, and speaking of backups, another good reason to go to conferences, everyone's giving out swag. You will come out
Yeah,
with handfuls of pens and notepads, and
great point. Yeah,
I go through them probably within the year because I'm always
yeah,
writing something down. But it also saves me, there's no telling how much in trips to Walmart, Home or Office Depot, Amazon.
yeah.
And
That's a
plus, they
really,
look
really
really
good
good on
point.
your desk.
It's true. And you can remember those contacts, right? And build a network too while you're at it.
Also, it's kind of nice to get design ideas from them too. Like, well, I like this, but I could also, make it more exciting. The colors are fine, but boom, swapping out this color really makes it pop.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm hearing from what you're saying that also resonates with me is like look for opportunities to be creative and to think all the time. They're always out there. One of the beautiful things about anthropology and archaeology too is the world is full of exciting things to think and exciting perspectives to learn and things to wonder about. And just keep doing that. Force yourself to keep doing that. I had I don't want to ramble on, but in my field work in South Africa, I had a field note journal, and I would insist before I went to bed every single night that I either had a strange fieldwork idea or an interesting idea. And I'd have to stay up until I thought something strange or I thought something interesting. And a lot of that stuff was nonsense. Like I'd never revisited it. There's nothing to it. But it did turn out that like I came to a bunch of really interesting, strange observations because I made myself do it. And so connecting those dots in the conspiracy theory chart, jotting down everything, wondering about the layout of the branding of this particular notebook or something like that. Those are all little opportunities for a bit of creative thought. And I think just grabbing those when you can find them and holding on to them as long as you can is part of what makes this job great.
Yeah, my favorite thing about what we do is it's not something that is tethered to a specific location. Well, I mean, it can be if you're, researching a remote corner of the world, like
Hmm.
your life centers around that corner of the world. But anthropology, archaeology, the social sciences, those are stuff you can actually do anywhere in the world.
I couldn't agree more. You're totally right.
Like the world actually becomes your office.
Yeah, that's really well put.
I
Every
stole that from a James
culture.
Bond movie.
You shouldn't say that. I liked it a little bit better when it was just you coming from you. But though
Oh,
it's true that like there's culture and social relations and history everywhere you look.
yeah. So we're about out of time. Josh, any last minute things you want to throw on there or
I don't think so. Just to affirm, like, if you have any interest at all in this Lost Library project, if you want to be updated, if you have contacts, like, send this far and wide. Reach out to me. I'm responding to everybody. I'm making a point of it. So I will get back to you very quickly if you're interested, if you want to know more. But thank you so much for having me. This was really, really wonderful.
yeah, absolutely. And we will put the web address for the Lost Libraries project in the description of the video so you guys can follow along. Is there social media they can reach out to and follow?
Um, I do not have a social media presence yet. That's going to be something, one of the neat things that I'm exploring right now with Anthropology News is a repeated column where in conversation with an author, talk about their unfinished work. And at that point, I'm thinking of creating a Lost Library Instagram where the content can be sort of publicized and amplified there. Because I think there's going to be some really, really wonderful, powerful stories that emerge from that. But right now, it's just like website, building a database. Those are like keeping a narrow focus, working on the priorities. And when I have something to share, there'll be stuff to share.
Yeah, that's something that I don't think people take into account when they create a digital program. It is a process. It's like
Oh, sure.
you're creating a living thing. It's digital, but it's also something you have to watch and maintain and water.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a really good point. And a lot of this is beyond my expertise, so I'm really fortunate that there are some people who know a ton about this stuff who are helping me out. But I'm excited to see where it's going to go in the next month. I think we're really going to have something.
Yeah. So that's going to do it for us here today at Archaeology After Dark. Josh, thanks again for joining me. This has been a really great episode. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, well, it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. This was
Yeah.
wonderful.
So stay tuned for more, everybody.